All right, the webinar has started and I see our guests already rolling in. Welcome to the Authentic Growth webinar. If you had planned to attend a webinar on getting inside the minds of AI's builders, congratulations, you're in the right spot. I am Jennifer Zick, founder and CEO of Authentic. Delighted to be your host today. I want to share with you a little bit about Authentic and this webinar series if you're a first-time guest. Authentic is a fractional CMO firm. We serve clients all across the US and sometimes beyond. The clients that we work with at Authentic are generally established growth businesses. Usually they're between 10 million to 250 million in revenue. They are on a growth trajectory and they know that it's time to overcome random acts of marketing and move confidently into the next stage of growth. And we help them do that by matching them with a right fit fractional CMO and a full marketing operating system and resources to help them build modern, mature marketing teams and programs. And a big part of how we're doing that is by helping our customers leverage AI solutions on the marketing side of the world, but also across their business and every touch point that impacts revenue and efficiency, because efficiency is a big part of profitability inside of a business. So even though we are not a technology solutions development company, we hang around with a lot of smart tech people. And today I've invited three of those smart tech people to join me for this webinar so that we can learn from them. These are the builders of AI solutions in a lot of different shapes and forms. And today we're going to pick their brains a little bit and hear what they're seeing on the horizon and what they're experiencing right now in their work within their own businesses and with their clients. So in a moment, I'm going to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves to you. But first, I also want to acknowledge that today we have a wide variety of guests in the audience. Many of the companies that we serve, we're working with their CEOs and their executives, and some of them are in attendance today representing that small and mid-sized business. We also have a lot of friends in large corporate organizations that tune in to see how we're innovating in entrepreneurial landscapes and what they can bring back to their large organizations. Then we have a wonderful network of independent consultants and advisors who work with similar clients. So we're here today to talk about innovation in a way that I hope is going to give you all a little nugget that you can carry back to whatever your world is. And I know that our panelists today are happy to connect with you on LinkedIn or follow up if you have questions as well. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my esteemed panelists and friends. And I'm going to start with the person who's at least on my screen left, and that's Grant. Hi, Grant.
Hey, Jennifer, how are you? Thanks for having me on today.
Of course, happy to have you.
Absolutely. I'm Grant. Just brief intro on myself. I'm the CEO and co-founder of an AI software company in Minneapolis called Boon Logic. At Boon Logic, we've developed solutions and capabilities that help bring high-speed baseline intelligence to a variety of different markets. So we live at a very low level in the world of AI, but we enable a lot of really cool things that resonate with consumers as well as large organizations. So happy to be on the call today, and thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks, Grant. Dustin, I'm coming to you next. Hey there.
Dustin, Modern Logic. We help businesses and government agencies implement complex technology and then maintain it. Complex technology is everything from your website all the way down to AI. And we've done big projects for state governments. We've done small projects for, startups, and we work a lot in the regulated fields like HIPAA and defense and those sorts of things. But we're happy to work with manufacturers and anyone else, and we really help people break the data barriers down and integrate new technology and then keep it alive because you've invested a lot of money. And we often think, oh, we're going to build it. And then we don't think how we're going to keep it running. And that's a big part of our business.
That's right. Thank you so much, Dustin. And Paul, grateful to have you here today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Hilsen. I am the CEO and co-founder of Compoze Labs. We're a software development and AI consulting company. So we bring clients through that, what I call our triple D process: discover, design, deliver. What's your strategy? What are you trying to build? All the way through implementation. We're based here in Minneapolis as well.
All right. This is the best of the local thought leaders today. So for those of you listening, this is the third in our series of 3 different AI webinars that we've hosted over the last couple of months. We started with a panel conversation with marketing leaders. Then most recently, we had a conversation with CEOs talking about what it feels like to be a CEO in the hot seat of AI innovation right now, which is like exciting, anxiety producing, and there aren't enough hours in the day. And in fact, we were just talking about that before we launched into this webinar today. So the feels are real. But today, the reason I brought this panel together is that I wanted to acknowledge that for those of us who are operating in our businesses every day, running the businesses, fulfilling our role while also learning at a speed like never before and trying to understand how do we apply these tools today. But as soon as we've learned something, the landscape's already changing, right? So I wanted to get with this crew of technologists who are spending their days looking around the corner to help us kind of see where things might be going next and just keeping a balanced perspective on what it means to innovate in the face of actually running a real business at the same time. So let's dive in. And Dustin, I would love to start with you. You're always building something over there at Modern Logic. So you're working in the space where the future is being built. So let us into your world a little bit right now. What is it that you're working on in terms of AI solutions, agents, capabilities? Where are your clients deploying these solutions? And then what has you the most energized right now?
Yeah, so I have to say, we're still pretty early in the AI adoption cycle. As much as we've been talking about AI for a long time, it feels like a long time now. When you look at AI adoption across clients, across industries, the good news is no one's really behind. Like everyone is kind of in that we're using the tools, we're trying to figure out what governance is, we're trying to mediate and figure out how to deploy these in secure environments. That's part of where we're helping our clients is how do we bring this in a way that's safe, secure. And then the next step is how do we break down barriers between your traditional data silos, like your ERP, your CRM, your email, and get all that in a secure sort of enclave that you can now apply AI to in a way that's safe and secure. So, for example, one project we are just beginning to wrap up is one we did with the State Tourism Department, where they have something like 100,000 assets that they need to manage and maintain in order to advertise and market their tourism to other, to potential tourists. And so maintaining that as a state government is really time consuming and expensive. It was actually impossible prior to AI. And we built a system that then aggregates all that data and allows them to do data analysis on what are the best cities and how do we advertise these cities to be places to visit. So that's one example. We're helping a major healthcare research university build a HIPAA compliant AI system for their patients to record longitudinal events that might apply to like a medical situation. So they meet with the doctor once every 6 months, but over the course of that 6 months, their long-term diagnosis, there might be some events that they miss or that they forget over that time period that are pertinent to their outcomes. And so how do they record those flare-ups over time and then infer from those flare-ups in a way that's meaningful for the doctor, as opposed to just the last 2 weeks is what the doctor typically gets. So that's a couple examples of what we're doing, but basically helping people make sense of this and apply it to very specific scenarios without having to, unlock the whole, totally understand the whole AI stack. Because what we're seeing internally is a complete transition in how we do the work, but most businesses are not ready for that. That is coming for most businesses, but we start by applying and seeing the benefits on the product side and on the solution side, and then we can start having conversations about, okay, what does this mean to how you deliver value?
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for starting by acknowledging that that we might all feel like we're a little behind or a lot behind already, but we're not. Everybody's figuring this out together. And it's so timely for you to say that because my next meeting today is my all hands meeting with my entire staff, where I'm going to introduce them to our AI manifesto and our first draft of governance and an update to our handbook. Like we've been using these tools like everybody, and it's time to like put some formality and guardrails around these things. We've been thoughtful, but every company is for the first time ever trying to figure out what is governance on this. What are these systems? So what about you, Paul? Give us a little window into your world right now. Like what's exciting that you're working on?
Yeah, so like Dustin was talking about, and I think what he was alluding to is what's exciting right now is that agentic AI has gone from what people thought of just telling you about things to actually executing, doing workflows, doing tasks. And this is something, it's a really it's something that's new in terms of what we thought humans had to always do before. You can have AI do this. I'll give you one example. This is a project we actually completed in 2025, where there's a company that they had humans reviewing hundreds, if not thousands, of RFPs a day, and they sold like televisions, as an example, to schools, to governments, and they were doing well. They're like a 50 to 80 million a year company with just that. Well, that was a lot of work for a human to read an RFP, understand what this is asking for, and then understand what their business does and say, hey, does this match our business need? Can we deliver on this? If yes, write a summary of this RFP, how we think we should attack this, put into our CRM, kick off downstream processes. This company approached us and we worked with them on understanding this workflow, and what used to take humans 7 to 8 days. And now it takes minutes to review and just go through thousands of RFPs, which is really cool. I want to point out two cool things about this. One, there's a direct effect. Yes, I was able to process faster. One human can do, I'll do the work of 10. Huge efficiency gain. The second thing is that this now allows them to be more strategic as well. So don't ever forget about the strategic side, where they are processing every single RFP that's out there, categorizing it, understanding what it's asking for, what the value of it is. So when they want to grow and go into a new domain, they have data to be able to drive that decision to say, we were thinking tables. That's like 2% of the RFPs. Why would we do that when computers are 25%? As far as I know, they're like the only people in the world that are doing this. So it's just a huge competitive advantage that would not be feasible without thinking about how do we incorporate AI to deliver real value to our business.
That's an amazing use case. And I'm curious, and you don't have to disclose any particulars, but with this client or others that you work with, how often are there innovative ideas of what they could do or want to do with AI roadblocked by maybe having a completely messed up CRM system? Like if it's one thing if you can complete a task and then send it to next steps, but what if that environment isn't ready for it or the data is not organized?
Uh, your data foundation is directly correlated to how much value you can capture from AI. Like absolutely. If I only have a small, if my data that's clean, that's cataloged, is a small footprint, I can only go so high with that. It's like a skyscraper. How you have a strong, solid foundation that allows you to go high. So yes, and there is a case where, or a lot of cases where either we have to cut off the value to only a certain extent because the data is not there to help us, or guess what? Yes, this is an AI solution that we're working on. 95% of this work is fundamental data engineering. Maybe 5, maybe 2% of it is really this AI component of it. So eat your broccoli, you need to have your foundation in place for sure.
Yeah. We still need some humans cleaning some things up to help the bots do their jobs. Yes. So, Grant,
Yes.
what's going on in your world that's exciting right now?
Yeah. So one of the things that's been interesting is, we've been in the AI space. Before it was all the generative tools, it was deep learning was kind of all the buzz. And before that, it was machine learning. And then before that was just engineering, right? And that wasn't that long ago, relatively speaking. So in 2015 was when we first started doing what we're doing. We incorporated in 2018, and now we've kind of started to build out the team. What's been exciting, I would say it has its set of challenges with it as well. But what's exciting is that what seemed to be waves that were missed, if you think of a surfing analogy, right? Like a wave comes and you miss it, you don't quite catch it. And we've had a few of those over the last, let's call it 10 years, where, hey, I think AI is going to be this big thing and it loses traction, right? Because Industry 4.0 doesn't get sensors deployed and now data's a mess, as Paul was talking about. So there's a lot of reasons why things haven't gotten the traction that I think we had all hoped for and companies had hoped for. But what's exciting is that we're now getting to the place where it's here to stay. Like there are industries and there are roles within organizations that are starting to catch the wave, and they're starting to see some ROI. I would say it still has a ways to go. But we're now starting to catch it, and even in regulatory environments. So I think it was Dustin was talking about how they're doing some work in the regulated space. We do work in the pharmaceutical manufacturing space, so FDA is a part of that, and we do some work in the defense space. And so, when you're getting into these really mission critical environments, such that regulators are even overseeing it, we're also seeing them kind of come on board, and you're seeing regulatory guidance for AI involved in a process where before it was like, what do we do? Right? Hey, what should we think about this? Should we allow it or not? And nobody understood it. So I think I'm excited that it's becoming more not commoditized, but household, right? Everybody's hearing about it. Even consumers are, in your daily life, you're using it for different things. And so then you take those experiences to your professional life and say, hey, I'm doing this kind of thing. Maybe there are ways that I could apply it in my work. And so I think it's seeing it kind of sticky a little bit, where in the past it's kind of been a flash in the pan, coming gone. I'd say the other thing that's exciting for me is we have a focus in our business of edge native. And so, when everything first happens, it happens locally, and then there's this big push to the cloud. Everything's got to be done in the cloud, and people are, how do I get my data there? And so you're migrating data and all this stuff. But you're starting to see a lot of things come down to the edge, and even like edge native AI PCs coming out, right? Where there's like a whole bunch of tools built in. And so that's exciting because I think it's going to make people more familiar more quickly with these tools and start building trust, which I'm sure we'll talk about today, is a critical component for both the way that you kind of organize your organization. Hey, trust has to be there in order for people to use and develop on these tools. But once it's there, that's where you really see the efficiencies.
Amazing. Well, Grant, I'm coming right back to you actually with this next question. I'm going to flip the script. So you talked about what's exciting. What's moving faster than you think people even realize right now? And what shifts are going to catch us off guard in the next 6 to 12 months? I don't expect you to be a fortune teller here, but just
Sure.
like general sense.
Sure, absolutely. So I think we've been fortunate to kind of be an R&D type organization on the early stage of algorithmic development. So 0 to 1 solutions, right? Starting with a blank slate and saying, hey, there's this problem out there. Can we use our unique algorithm to solve that problem? And most of the time, it's a solution that goes from non-existent to existent versus an improvement of something that already exists. That being said, when you're ahead of the curve a little bit, you're kind of bumping into barriers of what people expect or have seen in the past can work. And we're dealing with very smart people, right? So you're dealing with PhDs and data scientists who's got they have all this experience and all this academic background. And so that can become a challenge. I would say one of the things that most people don't realize, if you're not living in these tools or utilizing them, is, and I have a screen pulled up where it's Opus 4.8, right? So that's one of the models inside of Claude. And that will be 4.9 far faster than anybody realizes. And the changes that they've implemented version over version, the models keep getting better. And it's not like a release cycle once every 6 months or once every 12 months. It's like Claude, for example, they're using their own tool to write their own next versions. And that's happening like 3 release cycles in the last, several weeks or months. So I think one of the things people need to be aware of is, even 6 months ago or a year ago, hey, there's hallucinations and there's all these things. My data is not exactly right. And so they kind of push it off to the side and say, I'll come back and visit this in a year, or I'll come back and visit this in 18 months. That is an eternity in this space. It is a really, really long time because of how fast things are developing. So I think people will be caught off guard by, which model's better for different types of things. If it's GPT or Claude or some of these others, they're kind of doing this on the almost weekly. It's like almost like watching the stock market cycle up and down based on, speculation there. So those release cycles are getting fast. I'd say the second thing, and I touched on it a little bit with the Claude example, but self-learning is accelerating deployments. A lot of the traditional AI of 5 years ago was deep learning and neural networks, and really good for some use cases. But the challenge is it requires a massive amount of human input and tuning and pruning. And that was a skill set requirement, right? Like data scientists were like immediately the most, sought after scarce resource on the planet, because you needed them to use the right models and then curate the right data and then do this data labeling. You saw like Mechanical Turk, like hiring people to, label things for like a fraction of a penny per label. And so that was like, man, we get deployment cycles that are like a month or a quarter or even years. That's like, we're getting to the place where we can deploy, and Paul, you're talking about this, like you're down to like minutes, maybe days for really complex things. That cycle of iteration is going to, I would say for people who aren't paying attention, there are competitors that you have that are adopting these solutions, working with these solutions. And so they might be smaller, but they're going to start having, product parity and even product advantages over yours for far less operating cost. And so that's going to be something that catches people off guard, is like punching well above their weight, these companies that came out of nowhere. And I'll give you an example. This is where I'll end with it, with this first part. In the industrial military industrial complex, so big prime contractors, Lockheed Martin's, Raytheon, BAE, big companies, they've dominated this space forever, right? They get the multi-billion-dollar contracts. They can kind of deliver, I'll leave names out, but they deliver varying levels of quality of product and service, but they get paid a lot of money to do it. Well, enter a company that nobody had heard of, founded by a guy named Palmer Luckey and Andrew, right? And Andrew came out of nowhere, and they're like, "Hey, we're AI forward." And if you talk to the founder, he's kind of got a mullet and Hawaiian shirts, and he's kind of your stereotypical tech founder. And he's like, "Look, it's not that we've got like the best 0 to 1 ideas of all time." He's like, "I was a avid sci-fi reader as a kid. And so I got all these ideas in these books I read. And now we have with AI the capability to actually bring these things to fruition." So like half the stuff I think of, like I read about it when I was 12. And now we have the tools to build it. And what you've seen is they win a $8 billion contract. Then they built a $20 billion contract. And they're ousting these incumbents that have just dominated the market. And so that's like punching above your weight, rapid development cycles. It's really interesting and fascinating to see. And I think for people that want to be builders, it's the barrier to entry has gotten lower, where you can really become extremely effective with very compact teams.
Wow, that is awe-inspiring and a little sobering all at the same time. So, Paul, let me come over to you with this next question. You're working across multiple clients and industries. So, where right now do you see the biggest gaps between what AI can do and what organizations are actually ready for? This kind of is a good segue, because some really established companies maybe aren't ready to move as fast as some of the up and coming fast startups. So where will that pressure show up first? Will it be talent, process, tech infrastructure? What are you seeing?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And my answer is it depends. Depends on the company. But maybe I can start by being a little bit more pointed and even controversial. We talked earlier about how we were saying you're not behind with AI. I think it depends what you mean by that. And what we talked about before was there's firms who have this data foundation in place, and there's firms who do not. And how I describe this from a purely marketing, not technical sense, I show this as an image. And it's my favorite image we've ever had. It's a bodybuilder. And it's this bodybuilder who his upper body is incredibly bulky, popping pecs, biceps, you name it, right? And that's your AI ambitions. You want to have that, right? The legs, they're chicken legs, they're small, and that's your data strategy, right? And so there are firms that have these great ideas, great concepts where they want to go, but they don't have that foundation in place. They've skipped leg day for decades, if you will, right? And so the firms that have done that foundational work have not skipped leg day. Back 10 plus years ago, it was called digital modernization or digital transformations. And that was just sexy talk for, I need to get my data cataloged. I need to get in a place that I can use it so I can have my Power BI dashboards. I can build apps off of that. Guess what? I can now also build agentic AI off of that. And so firms that want to move fast, they're hitting these roadblocks, kind of like you talked about before, of why can't I move faster? It's because you don't have that foundation in place. And like I mentioned before, we need to do that fast. There's really no getting around that to start with that. Now, the good news is this is software. I keep saying foundation. It's not necessarily a building, like building the concrete where you need to build all the foundation first, and then you can build up. You can take vertical slices. And so this is one of the things that I get very excited about, is working with executives and what we call an AI boot camp or AI transformation assessment, whatever. What are the use cases that are going to move the needle the most for you, right? Let's identify those, understand that, hey, if I were to wave a magic wand and say this process goes from weeks to minutes, or I can do this, that would mean I get $10 million more a year. That would mean I'd save 50 million in a year. What would it take to build that out? Well, if it's 500K to build that out, that's a no-brainer. If it's 50 million, that's a different story, right? And so, yeah, I think a lot of firms are going to not understand that. I said eat your broccoli before, right? You need to eat your vegetables. There's this work that's not so fun per se. And in fact, I would even say before the IT teams that were trying to get the CFO to assign the budget to a digital transformation that were blocked are now just maybe Jennifer taking your marketing expertise and say, no, this isn't a digital modernization, it's an AI transformation. And CFO will say, yep, approved. Like let's go ahead with this. Pretty much the same thing. But so that's one big thing. I think the other thing is, AI as a culture needs to really be from the top down. Your governance, you need to provide that guidance to say, yes, we want you to use AI, and here's our governance. What does that mean? Here's my left and right bounds that systematically we can put in place so that you can experiment, you can go crazy, and you can do no wrong, right? If you try to do something you shouldn't, you're going to hit a roadblock. Good, you experimented. Keep bouncing off those walls and deliver value for the business. So I think it's a cultural thing that there's some people stuck in their old ways, not wanting to dive in, and they have a hard time thinking about how can I provide systematically these guardrails for my firms to be able to achieve what they need to here.
I think that is hard if the top leaders don't understand what the guardrails are, or even what their like universe of data or processes need to be. If they've been a little disconnected, it's a hard time to lead.
Uphill
Dustin, you had
battle.
something?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, on the other side of that, I think, cultural sort of cultures tend to resist change. And a big part of why cultures resist change is because people are busy. And they don't have time to learn new things. So I think you have to pair this with, you have your governance in place, but you also have ownership that is pro AI, that understands the capabilities, that's excited about it, and is capable of translating that excitement, and then also provides the resources to those employees to take the time to learn these things, whether that's training, it's access to the tools, it's extra time in the one-on-ones to explain why it's exciting, time for your team to share with each other what things they've achieved and how the wins that they've had. So you can't just change the culture by saying, hey, I gave you access to Claude and Cowork, and now everything's going to be magically changed. It's just like I think there was an article by a major research university in Columbia last year. This is normal technology, and so thinking about it in terms of we need a cultural change, just like we're bringing in an ERP or a CRM. We need to now think of this as there's an adoption time frame. There's resources needed to do that adoption. There's training needed. There's mindset shifts versus doing it what you used to do on paper. Now you're doing it in the tool. And the good news is that just like any other technology, we know how these sorts of transitions happen. This isn't just because it's incredibly powerful technology doesn't mean that everything we know about adopting these sorts of things is now out the window. It's we have decades and decades of experience with digital transformation. And if you don't, there are plenty of people like Paul and like myself that can help walk you through that journey. And AI makes it much, much more easy to break down those barriers between, say, data silos. Integrating one of our clients, we're integrating a COBOL-based AS400. This is technology that literally sat in a closet for 40 years, and it is now working with the AI, and it took us a week, right? And I think the barriers to integrating that data and transforming that data are much lower because the AI tools are so powerful. You just have to take care. I agree with Paul 100% in the statement in data world, garbage in, garbage out, right? And like you still have to go through the phase of working through your data and making sure that it is sane enough that the AI isn't gonna, it has a basis to make inference on. Otherwise, it's gonna kind of make stuff up, which
No,
is
absolutely. I mean, for years, I've been quoting a former colleague of mine who, when he talked about marketing automation, which of course a lot of people in the world thought would be automagical, and it's not. But he said just turning on the machine doesn't automatically help your brand. It could just make your brand suck faster to more people, right? And that's really true. And now it'll suck even faster and faster to more people if you don't get this right. And that's a real risk. So that was a perfect tee up, Dustin, to the question I want to bring over to Grant, which has to do with tools versus transformation, because there's a really big difference between using AI as a tool and leveraging AI to reshape how the business really operates. So I would say most companies around my world and the conversations I'm having in my couple of CEO peer groups I'm in, they're in the tool phase. They're using chat or Claude as a thought partner. But what does it look like, Grant, when a company starts to make the leap to real transformation? And what do you think has to be true for that to work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Paul and Dustin talked about this a little bit. I think leadership has to be on board, and it needs to be pushing a general direction, saying, "Hey, here are all the benefits," and providing access to capabilities. But I think also passing on a level of autonomy to your, especially in our world, engineering teams, that they're smart people and they do a really good job, and some of them have been working in the industry for a long time. If you think about manufacturing, it used to be people swinging wrenches and hammers and everything else. And then all of a sudden, automation equipment came up. There's resistance to it, right? It's like it's a threat to my job, my livelihood. It's changing the way that I have to do things. Dustin, you talked about that as well. I don't want to change. Well, okay, it may elevate your overall process and elevate you. One of our kind of older taglines is elevating human intelligence, right? It's not replacing it. It's moving us out of the kind of the monotonous mire of the things that humans do. We can do it, but we can't scale very well, and it's not life-giving type thing. So how do we automate some of that stuff? Data entry, right? Going into your CRM and then coming back out and drafting an email, like stuff that's like maybe there's maybe someone on this call likes doing that work, but but those are the things that we can try to automate with these tools, and then allow us to do higher level things. So I would say another thing that is interesting, and I think we've seen this specifically in our business. So I'll kind of state what we're seeing and relate it back. People are viewing AI as on the product side. If you're building products that people will then use, many companies are viewing it as an afterthought, as a bolt-on, as an add-on, but they're kind of like, I want to keep everything that I've built, and then we'll just kind of slap some AI on it and call it AI. And you see this all over. Just do a search for any company, and they'll say, we're doing AI. Well, the product portfolio really hasn't changed that much, except they've got a couple features. And I think those that are thinking about AI as a native capability, that's where you're going to see a difference in product development. It's not an afterthought. It's actually from the ground up, re-architecting such that it's ingrained in everything that you're doing. I'm sure Dustin and Paul, you guys have probably worked on big transformations. A company buys another one, and you got ERPs, and you got all these different systems. You got to try to figure out how to merge them all and make them work, right? And that's like not efficient. It costs companies a fortune to do it, but it's kind of this necessary evil. And so I think when you are able to start from the ground up and rebuild, I'll give you an example. One of our products is in the pharmaceutical visual inspection space. So we have a system that uses off-the-shelf cameras, commodity hardware, stuff that's been in the market for 20 years. And all the big competitors of ours and the incumbents have built it on traditional computer vision tools and using off-the-shelf hardware, and are servicing their customers. Well, we come along with not an AI, bolt-on to an existing system. We started from the ground up with an algorithm that is proprietary to us, and we built the entire architecture around this unique way of processing information. And it's delivering better results than the customers or the competitors that we're going up against in the market. And so they're just trying to throw more like bolt-ons to try to kind of patch the holes, the leaky holes. And it's like, this is a fundamentally like ground up approach, and it allows you to do different things. So I think that's part of it is when you can, and tools have allowed the efficiency to be here where you can rewrite things. A friend of mine from the Twin Cities, custom home builder, builds beautiful homes, built a software tool for picking the different options and whatever, and he sold that, and it kind of had its pathway, and then the buyers came back and said, hey, you want to buy this back? Sure. He rebuilt the entire thing, which I think the first time took him something like 2 years. Rebuilt it in about 6 weeks. And now it's fully automated, and he's marketing and it's really, really cool. Okay, so that's like, hey, I had this legacy thing, and I went back to an AI native re-architecture, and the scaling of his team now versus then, and the capacity to deliver a higher quality product, faster cycles of, hey, I had customers give me some feedback. Great feedback. It's going to take me 3 months to get those features implemented. Not anymore, right? Not anymore. And so I think those are some of the things that I think are important. If I summarized it, maybe, Jennifer, I'd say 3 things that have to be true. The work that you're considering doing must be worth redoing, right? Like there's a lot of things you're going to get a really marginal increase in outputs. Like, okay, that might be fun for a hobbyist, but I built a soccer app for my kids to manage playing time because parents were complaining, right? I was able to do that in about 45 minutes. Really cool. Uh, Probably outside of hobbyists, maybe not worth my time. I think the second thing is the system has to be trusted. We've talked about this on this call. People don't want to have to go and double check everything, right? Uh, and if they start to build trust and they find an issue, Paul, you're talking about this governance. It's like if this thing does a misstep one time, it can destroy credibility with your engineering team that may have taken them a while to get on board with this. And if it happens customer facing, it can be catastrophic for your business. So trust in the system takes a long time to build, and you got to make sure that you're doing it right. And then I'd say the third thing is that we talk about data a lot, right? What does your data look like? If the AI doesn't have access to the relevant information that you're trying to output, it's just going to give you a vanilla answer. And it's like, well, that's not really true for my business. Okay, well, what have you told it about your business? Well, nothing. Okay, what access to information does it have? Does it have access to your marketing materials and your brand book? Does it have access to your financials? And does it have access to your customer pro, all that stuff? And all of a sudden, it starts getting much better. So it takes time. We got to be patient with it. But I think leadership, empowering and enabling their engineering teams in my world, and then having that trust being built up such that they don't see it as a threat to their existence. They see it as an accelerator and an enhancer to the things they're doing, so they can be elevated into like what they really love to do.
Yeah,
I
that's
wanna,
great. Oh, go ahead,
I
Paul.
want to build, I actually want to highlight something that Grant said because I think it's so important and it was so well said about how there are certain parts of your business of what you do that if it's worthwhile to rebuild with AI in mind, do it, right? I want to just give a quick example. I have a little bit of background in the military, and there was a point in time where, in order to arm airplanes, we used to have start with an airplane and then put a gun on it afterwards, right? And because of how the airplane was to begin with, that was limiting what you could do with the weapon, its range, how much you could rotate it, the caliber of it, right? It came to a point in time where it was worthwhile to have a competitive advantage in the air. And so the US military redesigned with the caliber and the gun first, and then built a plane around that, which led to a huge advantage in the battlefront. If they were to say, you know what, we want to redesign the whole plane around the lavatory, probably not worthwhile. Not gonna really give you that competitive advantage. But so really thinking about what is it that I'm gonna do, like Grant has done, to give me that advantage. And Grant, I thought that was so cool the way you described it. So we really wanted to
Yeah,
bold that
it's
statement.
great.
I mean, but meanwhile, it'd be okay if Delta rebuilt their planes around their lavatories. I would
Yeah.
be on board for that.
A
All
little
right.
small.
A little small. All right. Well, let's see. Where was I? Okay. So coming over to you, Dustin. There's a lot going on in AI, and I sense it with my peer group, this dual reality of, well, this is energizing and also really scary and
Mhm.
overwhelming. That's a feeling out there. So there's fear of being left behind. We started with that. There's fear of job displacement or fear of making the wrong bet because leaders are making big bets and their neck is on the line with that. So you live in this space every day and you seem really energized and not afraid. So how do you think about that? And what would you say to a CEO who's leading from anxiety right now rather than vision?
So first off, I'm a fifth time founder, so looking to me to feel fear is that part of me is just not extant. It's not part of my DNA. So take it with a grain of salt. I think for most people, if you're holding those things, I'm excited, I'm afraid. That's the feeling of sanity. You can be both of those things. You probably should be a little of both because that creates caution and it creates a capability of looking at things and trying to be clear-headed instead of being, oh, let's adopt too much, let's adopt too little. It keeps us in this nice tension point where we can actually lead from and just don't let it cripple you, I think. But in terms of excitement, I think my business is changing more every 2 weeks than it has over the last 15 years, 20 years of doing business. And what excites me is not only are we unlocking new things that we can do or doing things faster. We're unlocking new capabilities, new ways of delivering value for our customers that we could not do. One of the common questions I ask when I get into a room and I'm talking to people about AI is imagine your business when the cost of producing knowledge drives down to zero or near zero, right? What does your business look like when you can accomplish the labor component of it minus, shop floor type stuff, when you can that office labor with very little effort or overhead? What more can you do for your customers? What does value delivery look like? And so we really saw this transition in December, January of this year, where the AI models, as we've alluded to, have switched from sort of thought partners to coworkers or employees. And in terms of their abilities, you can now let them do the work. And anyone out there who's saying they can't do competent work has not used the new AIs appropriately. If you're talking about, for example, prompt engineering, you're not talking about context engineering. Prompt engineering is last year's tech. This year, it's all about context, right? And it's about how do we teach it about more of our business so it can do more work for us. And so we're starting to see more workflows where we have whole sections of our business that used to be onerous, labor intensive, but they weren't producing value for our customers. That is, the AI is doing all of that work. So even simple things like we can have a meeting with a customer, a discovery meeting, and out of that meeting, there's a transcript. And that transcript, no human reads. An AI picks that up and produces the statement of work, produces the project plan. The project plan then automatically goes into our project system. Our developers' AIs eat from that project system and plan how they're going to do the work. And the developer shows up in the morning and just says, okay, I've got 10 plans for the 10 things I want to get done today. And so I've never been more excited about our capabilities because we can do so much more. For instance, that state government project I referenced earlier, we completed that 1 month early with twice the scope. And anyone who's ever been in a software project, you never hear I'm early and the scope is bigger. You always hear I need more time or we need to cut scope in order to hit the deadline. Like that was the traditional way of doing things. We used to run on 2 week, what's called sprints, agile development, trying to control change in software development. And now we don't care much about change in software development because if the client throws us a curveball in the third quarter, we're going to be able to respond to that so much better. And so when I go and talk to traditional businesses, one of the things go get Cowork. It's a great way to dip your toe into what agentic looks like. It's Anthropic Claude Desktop, and get a feel for what that would start thinking about. How do I build a muscle to think about approaching work differently, thinking about teaching my employees to approach work differently so that we can deliver more value for our customers with less time and effort. And that's why I'm so excited about it. The broad reaching implications on what it's going to do to the job market. I don't have a crystal ball, but what I can say is when we do look at the studies, we're not seeing the impact on jobs. And that's because this thing, I heard this quote a few weeks ago. I love it. It's Andrei Karpov, who's an AI thinker. He said, it's a chainsaw, it's not a kitchen knife. There are places where you need a kitchen knife, there's places where you need a chainsaw. And I think the humans are still in the equation, learning how to use the chainsaw appropriately, when to apply it, when to apply that wisdom. It's just allowing us to do a lot more. And so when I run into people who are scared of it, I say, think of it more as you've just been given the world's best power tool to do whatever you want to do when you're sitting at your desk or even when you're on the go. Don't think of it in terms of it's going to be a robot sitting in your seat instead of you, because that's not what we're seeing happen with the technology.
Yeah, that's great guidance. And before I go around the room with this last question that I have for all of the panelists, I want to invite our guests who are listening in. If you have a question for this panel or one of the individuals on the panel, please drop it into the Q&A. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little control panel. There's a Q&A feature, not to be confused with the chat feature, which I'm not watching. But if you drop a question into the Q&A, I'll see if I can reserve a few minutes to get you a few answers before the end of this session. So, Paul, I'm going to come to you as the lead on this question. So, if you could sit down with every CEO in the audience over coffee and tell them one thing about where AI is going and how to lead through it, what would it be?
Yeah. First, I would say I like my lattes with oat milk and hot. So remember that. And then, secondly, I would say when we do our AI boot camps with executives, they come to me saying, "Man, is AI magic? Can I think about that? Can I think about AI in that way?" And the answer is actually typically yes. And what do I mean by that? No, you cannot think of AI as replacing your thinking about how you do things. You actually need to understand your business better than you've ever have before. What is fundamentally important of having that management, that business acumen to know what's driving value, you cannot replace that with AI. What you can think of AI as magic is it can do anything, right? So if I have a workflow, if I have something that I just want AI to do because I know whatever, this is going to deliver huge business value to me, understand, be able to measure that, know what KPI that's going to move for you and by how much if this were to be the case. And then we will be the people to say, this is the implementation detail. And the fact of the matter is, maybe it's going to use AI, maybe not, right? But that's not your job as a leader. Your job is to understand your business, the core of what you do, and what it would mean if something was faster, if something was better, and what can I do to get there? And we would take Dustin, Grant, myself, we would take care of those implementation details. So yeah, kind of talking about what Dustin said about before of, how can you have energy over fear? These boot camps I'm talking about, it's a little bit more about energizing, getting people excited instead of afraid. Like start to imagine what is the art of the possible with this? And then we'll frame it into something that is actually business actionable within the right budget and the right time. So I'll just kind of close by saying what is funny is that before a big thing with the big consulting firms, McKinsey or Bain, they're all about business strategy and how this is fundamental. And yes, that is important. For some reason, AI came around and that went out the window of like needing to know your business. I could greenlight any projects along those AI. There's a lot of companies now, a lot of CEOs. I think the latest stat from Deloitte is like 75%. CEOs are like, yeah, we've spent so much money on AI. I can't tell you what the ROI is. I don't think there is any, right? And so your business fundamentals stay the same even with AI, even with AI in the scene. And so just understand your business and then let others, Dustin, Grant, myself, take care of the details for you.
I think Jennifer said it best early. If you don't understand your business, you're just going to suck faster. AI is going to enable you to deliver that at scale much more quickly. If you don't understand what the ROI is and you're not measuring it, you still have to be a strategic thinker with this. And the AI is a hell of a worker, but it's not. It will always tell you that your idea is the best idea ever. It's one of its main drawbacks, and maybe it isn't the best idea ever. And you better be sure of that before you press the button and send 100,000 emails.
Absolutely. And I want to thank AI for, I think, strengthening the value proposition of my business as fractional CMOs, because not only do you, as human leaders, need to understand your business better than ever, but you need to understand your buyer and your stakeholders better than ever. And guess what? They don't stay stagnant. You could build a solution that serves your market well right now, but the market keeps changing and your buyers' needs keep changing. The world around them is changing. Like, if you don't understand the humans that make your business world go around and you're not designing for human solutioning and connection, what in earth are you building for? And I am seeing my LinkedIn feed blow up right now with everybody who is acting as if AI is the new automagical marketing easy button. Like, we no longer need a team, we no longer need anybody. I'm worried about those brands and how they're going to stay connected to the people that make their business go around. So it's an interesting time. So, Grant, what about you? If you were to sit down with your CEO peers and they were not as well versed and they're kind of freaked out about it, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say maybe two things. The second, it ties into what Paul was saying. The first, though, is there's a lot of builders and companies trying to build their own things, and I think that can be a daunting proposition for a CEO. Like, I've got to hire the people or hire the expertise to go build stuff. There are many builders right now. We're kind of at that early pioneering phase of like building lots of apps for lots of things, lots of agents for lots of things. But that's also going to create a increase in the number of available products in the marketplace that are built out already. right? So it's not like you got to go hire this big data science team or experts in context engineering to do this. You should, if you want to do it now, and for some businesses it's the right thing to do right now, then talk to Dustin and talk to Paul and figure out what are the things that I can do and can build. And they'll also tell you what are the things that already exist and how do we help you implement these in your business. So don't be fearful of it. It's happening, right? Hate it, love it, somewhere between. It's going to happen. I think the second thing is to what Paul was saying is you still need to have a handle on your business, and even more so, which can be like, okay, I have to know more than I already know, and I'm feeling overwhelmed. But the beauty of it is these tools are going to allow you to make faster decisions, but not faster with worse information, faster with more informed assistance, right? It's like you can have real-time dashboards versus, hey, on Monday, I'm going to get this report pulled, but I got to wait a week and I'm always going to be kind of chasing last week or last quarter or last month's data. Whereas now it's like a lot of these systems are intertwining and they're going to be able to aggregate it and give you like real-time feedback, which is a level of information many companies have never had before. But it's going to allow leadership to be able to more dynamically adjust, and not have to wait. Shoot, we're behind by a quarter and we're way off. Big shift versus like you're moving the right direction. You're just kind of tuning. Every day you're tuning and making decisions to move that right direction.
That's awesome. I want to pose a question that we just got from one of our viewers who asks, you said not to outsource your strategy or the deep knowledge of your business, but how can you use AI to help you sort out when your business is going under fundamental shifts? You were already going there, Grant, but maybe Paul or Dustin, you want to take a crack at that?
I would
So
say,
in terms
oh, go ahead, Dustin.
I was going to say, in terms of sort out whether, I mean, you know whether your business is going through a fundamental shift. I think, using it as a thought partner has been easier than ever, and that's sort of the oldest use case. So having the conversation with the AI, the difference is you can have these long-running research tasks now with AI, where you can have it go out and read the internet and collate stuff and provide information for you to determine whether or not, these certain trends matter. The other thing is AI, specifically Claude, is incredible at financial reconciliation and financial review. And so feed it your 12 months of P&L, feed it your project management and your utilization numbers and all your shop floor data, and ask it, what am I missing? Right. And you will be, it will, in about 70-80% of the time, it's going to blow your socks off in terms of seeing things that you might be missing in terms of those trends. And so I think Grant has it right. Like, think your business in terms of data, like what would it be like to know what's happening right now in real time at all time, and start having that conversation with the AI in order to build out those sorts of real-time dashboards and real-time research. And then if you're doing it over and over again, work with an AI specialist to figure out how to keep doing that in a way that delivers it. But you can prototype that in a half hour sitting at your desk in the morning with a cup of coffee, without paying anyone. So that's where I typically recommend people start playing. We need to bring the sense of play back into our businesses. Business owners, we're all too stressed out. Calm down, learn to play. There's a reason you got into this business. This is the best time to play ever. And in my experience, having lived through 5 technology revolutions, the people that learned to play with the technology were the ones that succeeded. Right.
Hey, listen, I think that's a great bottom line for our event today is like permission to play.
Right.
Right? Permission to play. I think that's great. Well, we are going to make sure that we end on time. I'm going to check to see what anybody else wanted to chime in on that particular question before I pose one more while we have. Go ahead, Paul.
What was the second part of that question?
It was, how can you use AI to help you sort out when your business is going under fundamental shifts?
I would say, I think the first part was I shouldn't outsource. I think it's okay to outsource, to partner with experts, but you can't skip the step of internalizing it, right? And once you understand that, then, man, to Dustin's point, uh, I have gone to AI and connected it with that outbound research, with my internal systems, and it's spit out a lot of things. Of course, AI is confident. I look at each one of those tasks or initiatives or insights and say, man, I don't care about that if that's true or not. I don't care about this. This is big if true. Let me make sure this is actually true because I would change the way so the outsource, maybe the thinking isn't there. It can ideate and it's still up to you to validate and own that decision moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel like imagine you have a consultant you've hired, but they're new to your business and they go and do a bunch of research. You're not going to just immediately put that research into production. You're going to read it and use your own interpretation, your own knowledge of your business, just like you would with any employee or any person you hired. It's delegation, and then you validate. And then if it didn't get it right, oftentimes you go back and you give it feedback and you let it take another round, just like you would with any employee. The new skill here is delegation. And what's cool about management is all of us have delegated before. We've all spent a lot of time learning how to do that. And now we need to teach our employees who might be individual contributors, what the skills for delegation are. Because when you're working with an AI, it sure as heck feels a lot like working with a new employee on the team. It's like you did a great job at 80% of this, but you missed the mark on 20%. Here's how to not make that mistake in the future. Right.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to end with one, comment and a question perspective for all of you that I'm pulling from the last webinar that we hosted. So if this idea resonates, others can go listen to that last webinar on our website. But speaking from the seat I sit in as a CEO, leading a team of CMOs who are very AI forward, and we've been working in and sharing learnings for a few years around AI. And like many of our clients, we're testing out different tools that exist. We're dreaming about where we might custom innovate within our business, all of those kinds of things. But for most of the CEOs that I know, the initial tools that they're dabbling in are kind of the two big names we've already talked about today. We're working with ChatGPT, we're working with Claude, we maybe are investing in both of those, as well as ancillary AI, call transcription tools and other things. And there's built-in AI in a lot of our native platforms too. But what I'm seeing in my own company as a reality is like, first you have to invest more to empower and enable these tools and the trainings and the learning before you get the efficiency out of it. And we're all trying to decide what horse to bet on, but we're really kind of in the AOL version of the internet right now in AI. So whatever we bet on today is not going to be the winning horse in the future, probably. So I guess what would you say to clients who are like, we know we need to innovate right now. We need to make good use of these tools right now. What's going to happen to what they've built today 2 years from now?
So
What
I
should
think
their mindset be about that?
just like a lot of us are EOS companies, and
Yes.
one of the things you do in EOS is you document your procedures with really simple, procedure documentation, like 1 to 2 pages. This is the process, and these are the 10 core processes of our business that are the modern logic way or the authentic brand way, right? And what's so great about AI is the programming language for AI is English. And that is going to exist and persist regardless of what model that you have. So if you're building up a database of context, of files, it's literally right now it's files and folders, it's text files of what your business is and how you do things, that is going to move from platform to platform. And then you pair that with a text-based system for telling the AI how to validate the output of the different workflows that you've automated so that when you do lift and shift, or even when you have a dot release to a new AI, you run all your stuff over and you say, okay, now look at the outputs and tell me what needs to get fixed or where things have changed and gone wrong, where the drift happened. So when we picked up and moved from ChatGPT to Anthropic's Claude in December because the 4.6 was such an improvement. Um, and I literally went to ChatGPT and said, "Here's all of my contacts. Pull all that together because I'm moving to a different platform." And it happily ground through that and produced a great file that gave me a great starting point to do the migration. So I wouldn't be too worried that the investment that you're doing now isn't going to migrate. There's definitely going to be changes in maintenance. One of the things that is a growing part of our business is helping people maintain that stuff as things change over time. Because you can't just assume it's going to stay static. That would be a very unwise assumption, right? You can assume it's going to change every 2 weeks. How do we now persist in the world of that change? And software developers like me and Paul have solved that problem at scale for decades. So
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for the encouragement that it's not necessarily as overwhelming to lift and shift as you say. The other thing that I'm sharing with my team is like innovate quickly, but hold on loosely. Like don't get attached to a singular tool. Don't even get attached to whatever automation or whatever it is that you're creating right now, because depending on the iterations of these things, it might be perfectly the right decision to completely scrap and throw away what you just built, start over, and that'll be faster and better. So, like, it's okay to build something today that will be irrelevant 3 months from now, because if it's helping us today, it's moving us forward, right? And we're learning, and that learning is part of the innovation. So, um,
I'd add
anyway,
one thing. I'd
wow.
add one quick thing to what Dustin said because I think it's totally true. Um, GPT probably said to you, Dustin, that's a great idea to switch to
Oh
cloud.
yeah.
Just stroke the ego, right? But I think when people become familiar with the interaction of the tool, that's pretty transferable from one tool to the next. And so it's really getting in that familiar workflow. And then, the transportability is going to be easy. And I think it has to be in order for people to want to use it. But then the way you're engaging, that's not changing necessarily materially. Certainly new features and capabilities are coming out. But if you can adopt and learn a workflow, that's going to be a transferable, I'll call it a transferable human skill that'll allow you to kind of engage in those others as they change and evolve.
Exactly. I can't believe how fast this hour went. I know we could keep this conversation going, and maybe we should on another day, but for the sake of getting our guests to their next meetings on time and all of you, I'm going to wrap us right here and say thank you so much to our panelists for letting us get inside the brains of the builders today. I appreciate all of your just optimism and your generosity in spending time with all of us today and sharing what you're doing, what you're learning, what you're seeing, and I think providing a good boost of energy and encouragement to all of us on the other side. So thank you to our audience for joining today. I hope you took away at least one really helpful nugget, and we'll see you next time on the Authentic Growth Show. Until then, go forth, shine your light, be a blessing, stay human, be blessed. We'll see you next time. Take care.